Right, here we are it's very, very rainy Winsford. It's kind of unfortunate election weather because it's set to be this sort of weather, and very, very windy gales as well coming up, all up until this last week. It's Tuesday afternoon now. It's Thursday when obviously the vote happens. I think we know who you support by what you're wearing. It's not a fashion statement from the clothes show. Now, one of the problems that a lot of people from Labour are noticing is that, and what's interesting is some people seem to be supportive of the ideas that the Labour government have, and yet are saying they're not interested in voting for Labour just because of what they think of Jeremy Corbyn. How much are you noticing that problem when you've been out canvassing?
I think it is a big issue for some people, and then what we're trying to do is have a conversation with people about separating out the policies from the leaders, from the personalities of the leaders.
Stop making it about personality and just make it about what is going to happen in government.
Yeah, and also trying to think about the different policies that are important to people. So rather than us turning up on the doorstep and saying lots about policy, it's asking people, well, what's important to you? Would this kind of a policy affect you? What would you think about this? What would you think about that? I mean, actually, now that we're getting a bit closer to the election, there's a little bit less discussion, and it's a little bit more to the point. A lot of people seem to have made their mind up yet, although I think there is a higher level of people who are still undecided than maybe we had last time.
In which case, it's hard to call in that case because they may not be voting for the Tories if they're undecided. And the Liberal Democrats are still stuck behind in the first past the post system, and they're probably going to be at third place anyway. It's still, despite how things have changed, it's still a traditional election. It's still the top two, isn't it? And we're noticing
it is,
that.
It's going to either be a Labour or Tory government. So sometimes the conversation just boils down to that. It's going to be one or the other, and they might say, well, I don't want either. And you say, well, it's definitely going to be one or the other. So out of the two, which do you think would have your family's needs most at heart? Just have a look at the policies, have a think about that. But also what's sad as well, aside from the Corbyn issue, is that sometimes people, they understand about things like the NHS and things like that, but they don't associate any of it with politics. They don't know where that sits, whether the protectiveness of the NHS or who created the NHS, whether that is more likely to sit within Labour or Tory, because nobody learns about politics in school. So there's an awful lot of people who they say, I don't understand any of it, or they say these things are important to me, but I still don't know which way to vote.
So despite Jeremy Corbyn trying to make it as obvious as possible how much he's behind the public services, people still don't get that perception. So what perceptions do they ever say what perceptions they have of him, or do they often have no reason why they seem to be against him? Do they,
So, I mean, today on the doorstep, most of the people that we've spoken to today have been Labour. It's been quite nice, really, being out today. Lots of people are out, but those that are against Jeremy Corbyn, generally they've been turned against him by certain things that have just been repeated in the media. So one of the things that came up today was about someone said that he wasn't strong enough on defence, and someone else had said something about links with the IRA. So some of these things that have been repeated that maybe aren't quite accurate, or they've been skewed, within the media, they do get repeated back on the doorstep.
And the hypocrisies are not obvious, such as that Margaret Thatcher had to negotiate and it was kept secret, and he speaks to various people, and I suppose that's but at the same time they're just sticking to this mud sticks anti-Semitism and so what was the most pressing issue? What's the most pressing issues you say? I know that some of the powers that be are trying to make this election just about Brexit. Are you actually finding that is the most pressing issue, or is it things like the NHS?
It is things like the NHS and things like schools as well. I mean, what one woman that I spoke to this morning said that her husband wasn't going to be voting Labour, but she was desperately trying to talk him round because she herself is a teacher. She said, this last couple of years has been really terrible. Within the last year, we've had to buy pens, we've had to buy books, we've had to buy paper ourselves, for the classroom, which is just really appalling. And
that's like Dickensian, isn't it?
It's crazy that's happening. I think
pens are not that expensive for big government agencies. You wouldn't have thought. I think some people do understand, when, particularly today when I've been out, I've had some good conversations where I've been saying, it's not
it's not their children, it's not Boris Johnson's children that are going to lose out as a result of these cuts to schools and local services and the health services. It's our children, it's ours, and so it's just about trying to rebalance things. And I was really pleasantly surprised by how many people this morning were already onto that, and I didn't need to explain it. So I don't know whether I was just lucky with the roads that I was on, but there did seem to be a decent level of understanding today overall, but it's not always
within Winsford, which is quite an ordinary sort of solid down to earth town, but it is within a constituency where even in the new Labour landslide of 1997, the constituency is called Eddisbury in this part of Cheshire. That wasn't one of the Labour seats even in 1997. So what's your gut feeling now as we come close to the election about not just the chances here, but just the national picture for Labour?
I got really nervous for the first time yesterday. I got really stressed, and the stakes are so high. I think that's why I felt so stressed, because the stakes are so high in this election. But on balance, when I look at the trends and the voting trends and what we're hearing on the doorstep and that, I think we've got a good chance. I think we're going to do it. I think it's going to be close, but I think because we've got the younger vote coming up as well, and
because so many millions. Well, is it a couple of million? I'm not sure.
3 or 4 million.
Even that many who have registered to vote, and that the motivation for doing that might well not be a lot of them to vote Conservative.
It definitely is, and it leans very heavily towards Labour, and I think just the way that the polls have flattened out for the Tories and the way that we're still improving in the polls and Lib Dems are going backwards, I think that plays well for us as well. So, we're going to have to fight really, really hard. We need to get out and speak to as many people as we can on the doorstep. But I myself feel very hopeful that people do want change overall. And I think that some of our voters are despondent, they are unhappy about certain issues, and they might be staying away and not voting. But I think that maybe that's going to be at least as strong within the Tory vote as well. So.
Right, okay, well, thanks for speaking here on this is 107 Stream, put out to also social media, Facebook and so on, Twitter, and we're at least seeing that it might be kind of comparable to where we were in 2017, so we will see what happens, obviously, as you have to on that long Thursday night going into Friday morning. Thank you, Mandy Clare, which you